Welcome to the first episode of CineCringe, and if you came over here from Cinebinge, you might recognize my voice. I'm George, and with me on this spin-off series is Chris.
So what we're going to be doing on this channel is talking about the best of the worst and the worst of the worst movies, TV, and etc. The one thing we won't be doing is looking at anything good. Our first movie is the 2010 action sci-fi fantasy blockbuster The Last Airbender.
Which is already off to a terrible start because the name is wrong.
I have to start this off with, I guess, two embarrassing admissions. The first of which is that I've never ever seen a single episode or single frame even of the show Avatar, so I'm coming to this movie with no preconceptions about what it was like.
That's interesting because for myself is I recently watched the entire thing of Avatar Last Airbender on the other channel. So it's very fresh in my mind. So it's going to be two interesting point of views for this.
Absolutely, but I think we can both agree on the broad strokes of it, which is that this was an excruciating experience. The second embarrassing admission that I have is that I'm a longtime M Night fan and lover, and until this movie, I liked all of them. I liked The Happening. I liked Lady in the Water.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. I liked the Lady in the Water thing. He has the critic character that's like this blatant stand-in for the critics, where he just makes fun of critics and talks about how terrible they are for movie making within the movie, and everyone hated that, and I liked that. So I was sort of primed to be like, well, I know everyone else hates this movie, but I'm going to like it because I always like M. Night. But I did not. It was awful.
No, it was about as fun as laying face down on a wet carpet for 2 hours. It's just, it sucks so bad, and it's so insulting to the show.
And while you're laying face down on the carpet, someone's explaining endless lore to you, but none of it means anything.
The showrunner for the original series, they were both executive producers on this movie, and then just disowned it afterwards because they absolutely hated this piece of garbage. But it's interesting timing for us because Netflix has started production on the live action recreation of the TV series.
Do you have
and
high
this
hopes?
time around, I don't know, but it is helmed by the original show creator this time.
Well, that might be a good idea.
Hopefully it'll be good.
This is not in this movie's defense, but just an observation. This absolutely felt like a movie that must have been a catastrophe. One of the things that I read about it was that Paramount cut like 30 minutes out of the runtime because they wanted to do the 3D post-conversion, and they didn't want to spend all the money, and they didn't want to spend all the time to do a 2.5-hour movie, so they cut the movie way down. Man, do you feel that, because this movie made no sense whatsoever to me.
But here's the thing, though. I understand that is apparently a lot of the problems for a lot of bad movies is studio interference, right?
Yes.
And then you see a director's cut and it's like, oh my god, that's so much better. But with this one, I feel like even what's remaining in the film, it just seemed like M. Night had no respect for the source material. Because there were things in there that had nothing to do with studio interference. For example, all the characters' names are pronounced wrong.
Ong Sok Agni Kido.
My name is Ong.
All the avatars.
Ong.
Done.
No reason whatsoever.
I didn't know that.
The movie just called The Last Airbender. Why? Why did you take out the part that says Avatar? The Last Airbender.
Angry James Cameron, obviously.
The title screen for the TV show has Chinese characters written in the back. It's already there. I don't know why he chose to make them gibberish in this one.
They're gibberish?
Yeah, it's not anything.
Yeah, okay. That's a baffling decision, and I can't. I have no defense to offer. I want to be in M. Night's corner, but I cannot understand that.
And throughout this entire viewing session of this movie, what it felt like to me, M. Night was given this project, and instead of watching the entire show, he like went onto Reddit and just made a post saying, "What's your top 10 favorite scenes?" And then that was it.
I'm gonna struggle to not just talk about this over and over this entire time, because the number one thing about this movie was the endless exposition.
Yeah.
There are no scenes. The characters literally just reveal more and more information to each other in like straightforward statements back and forth. There's no adventuring, there's no banter, there's no sexual tension, there's no any of the things that are normal things in a blockbuster movie. They just don't exist. It's just replaced by talking about the plot.
Show don't tell is such a fundamental thing. It's so fundamental that it almost sounds cliche, but it is true. And this is the movie definition of doing the exact opposite. It's all just shows such disrespect to the source material.
And it was all just sitting there in the show to take.
He literally could have just copy and pasted.
Well, I knew right away that something was going wrong, because I love a movie that opens with an opening crawl and like sets the stage and gives you this awesome backstory. And this one, I was already distracted and lost just by the opening crawl. I understand all the individual ideas, but when we went from this information to people standing out on the ice and she drops water on her brother and we have a big laugh, I was just sort of instantly completely lost as to what the movie was, and I just never really recovered, except that the movie continually explains the entire plot all the way through, so I could kind of grab onto that, I guess.
I mean, this movie is supposed to be about the entire first season of a 3-season show.
Sure.
Aang, not Ong,
Okay.
Sokka and Katara, these 3 main characters, their personalities are completely off. Again, it's really, really well developed in the show, and all he has to do is watch them and just copy them. I don't know why he went with a different route. The first time that I've noticed this is when Aang is getting dressed, and in the show, there's a similar scene where he talks about how 100 years ago, he ran away from, his responsibilities from the Air Temple. In the show, when he was talking about that, he was extremely sad. He was extremely almost depressed and ashamed of what he did. And for some reason, in the movie, he does this.
I ran away from home.
We got in a storm.
It wasn't very smart. I was just upset.
You're not still upset?
Not as much as I was.
What happened? He was almost proud of it.
This is jumping to the end of the story, but that was something that really lost me was in the last moments when he kind of fully comes into his power, and that's a function of him, facing the grief and trauma and understanding the responsibility that he had shirked and that he now has to take on and into himself again. All of that became clear to me like at the end of the movie. And it's because of scenes like this. He didn't really seem all that bothered by what had happened or all that interested in what was happening.
He's extremely inactive in the movie for some reason.
And then all of a sudden, he's like, no, I'm escaping. And then he escapes, just like instantly and so easily. And I was like, well, maybe earlier. Maybe just leave. Maybe don't go with these guys.
When the Fire Nation shows up at the village, at the Water Tribe.
Yes.
In the show, he doesn't get dragged out in front, by a guard for a confrontation like this. He always chooses to act first. That's his character. He's the first one always to volunteer when there's danger.
I feel like even just hearing you criticize the movie, I can already hear how the show is better and more interesting.
And then in here, he's just a whiny kid for some reason.
Before we get too far away from the first appearance of Prince Zuko here, I just wanted to say, I actually thought Dev Patel was great, and I thought he had some of the funnest sequences in the movie actually. But this was the first of many times where lines made me laugh because of the mix of exposition and then sudden dramatic moments. And yes, I just burst out laughing here when Dev Patel shows up and he's like, "I'm Prince Zuko, I'm heir to the throne, I blah blah blah," and then he says, "Now bring me all your elderly."
Son of Fire Lord Ozai and heir to the throne. Bring me all your elderly.
There were so many times in this movie where I had whiplash from someone doing exposition and then immediately jumping to the most dramatic thing imaginable. There's another part soon after where Katara's talking about them having taken Aang and stuff, and then she's like, "Man, it's just like when they came and took our mother a while ago." And I was like, "What?" There's so many moments, and I guess if you watched the show, you knew what was going on. But they just casually throw off these things that are these massive events in people's lives.
That one little scene, poor Dev Patel, man. I think he came off of Slumdog Millionaire, right? Which was like massive at the time, I think.
I read about it actually. So when he auditioned for this movie, Slumdog wasn't out yet. So he auditioned as a nobody. So, but still, poor Dev Patel.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly a great actor. He's just given nothing to work with.
Yeah.
Oh man, and his character is also another one that's just way off base. When he has the Avatar on his ship, right, and before Aang escapes in the show, Zuko is relentless. That's his characteristic. He's really, really tunnel vision, single-minded. If he sees a goal, he will just chase after it no matter what. In the movie, he just stands there, gawks, and then gives up. He doesn't do anything to try.
See, this is, again, I just feel like I'm learning about the characters from you. And the reason that I'm able to do that, all you need to do is recount the actions that they take in the show, and then I understand the characters.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't work like that, because no one has a character that's expressed through action. The only thing they do is tell you what's going on, but you don't get to see them make choices and prove who they are to you.
I feel like this would have been better if they just had the characters do a cold reading and just film them reading the script.
May as well.
Then at least
May
you
as
would
well.
go, Aang is very angry and he feels this way.
Well, okay. So the other thing I didn't mention was that I watched this with Caroline, who has also seen the whole show, and I specifically told her, don't explain it to me. I want to experience the movie as a movie, and that was killing her. Because every complaint I had, she responded exactly as you just did. She was like, well, I could explain it. There's a reason. It's good. It's interesting.
This is probably the funniest scene I can imagine for both of us.
Yes.
It's this attempt for a one take. It is so awkward.
And this is actually the same as a lot of the movie. It feels like he just sort of made it up. Like he ran out of time. And he was like, well, I planned to do this oneer, but we didn't have time to choreograph it. So what if everyone just does their stuff? And then I'll wander over here with the camera, and then I'll wander over there with the camera.
Yes.
And then we'll throw some special effects in, so it doesn't matter.
My favorite moment is the scene where Aang is staring at the Fire Nation soldier who asks him, are you an airbender, boy? And then Katara just awkwardly walks across the frame, shoves him. Because this is what it looks like to me throughout this entire one take. It feels like the camera operator didn't get his gimbal ready, so it wasn't set up properly, so like nobody's ever framed correctly.
All respect to the camera operator. I'm sure you're brilliant and super good at your job. I'm sure this was not your fault, but something along the line totally disconnected. There's no sense that we're like following through the scene and that the camera's being pulled in different directions by different people or something. It really does just feel like some guy's like wandering around the set like a tourist with a video camera, like, ooh,
exactly,
look at this. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah. Oh god, this Fire Nation soldier's attempt in looking menacing with a fire is just the funniest thing. His sort of waving around with his hands reminded me a lot of that one comedic relief character in Kung Fu Hustle. Where he goes,
Absolutely.
I'm the chosen one, and then he just like closes his eyes and just kind of waves his hand around for a bit.
And this was the case with all of the sort of fancy oneers in the movie, because there are a few of them. I could never not look at them and be like, man, that's an actor on a set just like waving his hands around. Yeah. And he's just counting on M. Night that M. Night's going to make him look awesome, and M. Night is going to let him the fuck down.
Okay, so I think this is referring to a very great episode in the show where all these earthbenders are prisoners, but in the show it logistically makes sense because the earthbenders were trapped on a little island that's pure metal. There's no earth anywhere around because earthbenders
I'm glad you're telling me this. I was so confused.
Firebenders are the only one in the show that can just create fire out of nothing because it comes from their body. But for some reason he flipped this. He put a bunch of earthbenders amidst a bunch of dirt, but they refused to bend, and then they made the firebenders only bend existing fires that they don't generate from their body. And
okay, so in the show, like every firebender can
they just shoot fire out of their own body.
Oh.
Yeah. Out of their palms. So I don't know why he chose to do this by putting these braziers in the middle of nowhere. If you logically think about this, it makes no sense. There's a bunch of earthbenders surrounded by the earth. Why are they not just revolting against like half a dozen firebenders that requires these pits?
Yeah, there's this whole kind of idea throughout the first half that the Fire Nation are like the Empire basically, and everyone else is like these downtrodden groups. And I never really understood why.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because in the show, the Fire Nation gets to be so aggressive because they can just create fire out of nowhere, which leads them to smelt metal, which then leads to machinery, which then leads to machines of war. And that made them so much more intimidating and aggressive.
Man, this show sounds great.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
That's all so much more interesting.
The thing is, it wasn't just an oops. Because near the end of the movie, he made a very specific point to show
With
that
Uncle.
Pyro, shooting fire of his pen was this amazing thing, which it fucking isn't.
Yeah, there's a soldier running away, and he's like, he's generating fire out of nothing.
It's a thing that everybody can do. and then it pans over to these these 6 earthbenders with the one guy at the front who's way too excited. Yeah, they were just doing a dance for no reason. Nothing happened from their movements.
You know, I can appreciate the ambition here. I can imagine a production meeting where M. Night is like, we're going to do the craziest oneer of all time. It's not going to be like locked in on one person's perspective and following them. We're going to see like the whole action all the time. It sounds cool, but it's hard to get over the fact that the whole time you're watching them fight, you can just see a bunch of people kind of spectating. It felt like turn-based combat. Someone completes their full move, and then the other person goes.
What would you do if they try taking me away?
I'd kill them all.
Sokka here. Actually, you know what? Before I talk about what he's like, what do you think of his character?
I was super confused as to why he existed in the story at all. I understand someone has to have a romance with the princess. Everyone loves that, but he seemed totally uninterested.
In the show, he's a comedic relief, tells bad jokes.
What happened in your dream?
Food eats people. Also, Momo could talk. You said some very unkind things.
He's the only one without any bending abilities in the group, but what he has is a strategic mind, and he's lighthearted, and he's the one that cheers everybody else up when they're bummed out.
Oh.
But in the movie, he's the whiniest person.
Yeah, he's the most bummed out.
He's just constantly complaining.
It's
He's
not clear why he's bummed out either. Yeah. I do have to say, that was a real facepalm moment for me when we got to the end. And it faded out, and I was like, okay, the movie is over, thank you. And then we faded back up, and yeah, we got this sequel teaser, and I was like, even at the end, when post-production was finished, when you sat and watched this entire movie, you guys thought that a sequel was coming? I cannot imagine watching that movie and not being aware that it was not going to go over well.
Well, you know what? I think that makes sense for somebody who has never watched the show. Somebody who doesn't know what the fans want.
That's a very good point.
Okay, so speaking of tell, don't show, which is what this movie does.
Yep.
There is this great little scene here.
The scroll we had was proving to be helpful. Ong was practicing, but for some reason, he was having trouble with waterbending.
He tried once, and then the narration tells us he's having trouble bending. You couldn't just make him do a few more times and just kind of cut them together really quickly, because we would have gotten the point too.
There were so many sequences where there was voiceover, where there was a long explanation, where there was whatever, and every time I just thought, in the same amount of screen time, you could have showed this to us. You're not even saving time in the movie. There's this big truck in on the brother, there's this matching truck in on the princess, and then there's this voiceover that's like,
My brother and the princess became friends right away.
and I was like, I know! That's what those shots mean! We know how movies work.
I don't know who this movie is for. Because for the fans, it's so insulting, and for people who's never seen the show like yourself, it makes no fucking sense.
Absolutely. Even while I was watching it not knowing anything about it, I was like, I bet if you knew everything about the show, you still wouldn't like this either.
And I just paused at this frame perfectly because why did they make your Princess Yure's hair just so phallic?
Oh my goodness, I did not see that the first time. I have to say, just as you're getting into this, thank God I was not watching this in 3D. I can't imagine how much worse this entire experience would have been made by seeing this in a 3D projection in a theater. I assume everything that is muddy and dark and terrible to look at would have been 10 times worse.
This is just gray, blue-gray blur. What he does in the show is that he takes on this, like, he wraps himself in a lot of water and turns into this giant water monster.
Cool.
Goes into the ocean and starts smashing ships.
So much cooler.
Yeah,
what an odd. But they still were doing these giant fancy CG shots.
Yeah, all the ships are there, The water's all there. He just went out of his way to make the wrong choice. The sequence length would have been the same. The cost probably would have been the same.
I do have to say, for all that I love M. Night, I'm not sure that he has ever successfully directed an action scene that I can think of. I mean, not that he's tried all that often. There was that other one, Will Smith is like, goes to the alien planet or whatever, but then he breaks his leg and he's not in the movie. Is that right? After Earth? And then it's all Jaden Smith, and you realize you've been had. You've been fleeced by Will Smith as he creates the Smith dynasty.
It boggles the mind that this is the same director that made The Sixth Sense. For some reason, after the big final fight, nobody talks from that point on.
Right.
And then the movie kind of just ends. But it ends on the most awkward scene. Nobody's talking or saying anything. And for some reason, Aang just decides to strike a very awkward pose.
Okay, I wanted
and
to
then
know...
he has the look of constipation on his face.
He does. It ends with him possibly having shat his pants.
You know what this looks like? This looks like him going, I know where this is going to take me, this movie. I know what's going to happen to my life for the next
my last
3
shot
years.
of the film, and I'm just realizing what I've done. Tell me your favorite thing about The Last Airbender, the 2010 film, George.
You know what? Probably the only thing is Dev Patel himself.
Yep, and it's not the best performance that he's given, but it's still, yeah. I felt with Dev, with Cliff Curtis, with a couple others, I was just at least enjoying watching them act.
Yeah, because they're great actors. Yeah, they're just fun.
My favorite part of the movie was the establishing shots. When they showed up at the temple, I liked when they showed up at the walled city. Like anytime that it was showing me fantasy type environments, I was happy.
Okay.
But then nothing ever happened in those environments, so I was sad once more. My one other favorite part is the moment we already joked about, where at the end Uncle like generates fire by himself once the moon is red, but it does this like hilarious Shaw Brothers style like zoom in to his one eye, right? He's like enraged and fire explodes everywhere, and I thought that was great, and I was like, I wish the whole movie was like that.
So this movie, this is what we're starting the channel with, and this is what I was dreading the most, which is movies that are bad and boring. Movies that are bad and funny, I can absolutely enjoy, you know? When it's so bad that it's funny to watch, that I can crack a beer and just laugh at it, that would be great. This is just bad and it makes me angry.
And you can usually count on fantasy especially. Like, when it's bad, it's still fun to watch because there's all this crazy shit going on, and often people have ridiculous lines to say, and they chew the scenery and are super hammy, and it's really satisfying, even if it's not good. But this didn't give us that because no one had any lines to say. They only explained the story to us the entire time.
How would you rate this if you had to give this a rating?
I'm gonna give it a 1 point above minimum. I don't know what scale we're talking about here. If it's out of 10, I'm gonna give it a 1.5. There were like moments where I was looking at the screen and enjoying what I was looking at, so that's something, and that's not true of all movies. Especially as far as a big budget blockbuster, I think this is absolute bottom of the barrel. I don't know what blockbuster has been worse in the last 10 years.
This was like pulling teeth. That's what it felt like to me.
It
was just excruciating. It was slow. It was torturous. It was boring, and it was insulting. We're done with this movie. Let's never talk of it again and push it out of our mind. Except for the next few hours when I have to edit this goddamn hot garbage. But let us never speak of this movie ever again.
I can agree to that.
For the next episode, it's gonna come out very close to, if not on, Valentine's. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through all 3 kissing booths.
Yay.
And make one video out of them. You looking forward to that, Chris?
I've seen half of one kissing booth, and I turned it off. That doesn't bode well for watching 3 movies. I don't remember what it's about. I assume they set up a kissing booth. I looked at the poster, and I hate it. So those are my thoughts going in.
Because it's going to be 3 movies, I think I'm just going to get drunk.
I assume getting steadily more drunk as you watch the 3 movies will also match like the general production approach. It's basically what the filmmakers are doing. It's like slowly caring less and less.
That sounds about right. Okay, all right, that's it. That's a wrap for episode 1 of CineCringe. Thank you all very much for watching. If you like this video, remember to press like and thumbs up and subscribe. And yeah, if you're coming over here from CineCringe, welcome. Hope you're staying. If not, then to hell with you. Okay, that's it. We're done.
Well said.